influencer audiences have grown and grown and grown. So the valuable thing is the audience. And if you can sell multiple things to that audience, there's no reason why, rather than it being a brand here and then being an influencer here, actually the two just combine.
Hey guys, it's Matt Haycox here, and welcome to another episode of the Matt Haycox Show. And today I've got with me a brilliant young entrepreneur with a fantastic story and loads of great advice to give us, I'm sure. Now, Timothy Armoo, his story starts back to when he was 14 and he got into entrepreneurship by having a bet with his friend where he wanted to win 500 quid. He's gone on from setting up a business that involved tutors, language tutors I think it was at the time, to then going on to starting his own business-based magazine, where he interviewed the likes of Alan Sugar and Richard Branson. He sold that magazine at 17 years old, and he's now the co-founder of a company called Fanbites, which is the leading marketing agency for Generation Z. Generation Z.
Yeah.
He's saying all these words make me feel old. You see, Timothy, he's done all this and he's 25, so I really do feel super old. But Timothy, thanks a lot for being here, buddy, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and picking your brains.
Thank you. It should be fun. Let's roll.
Before we start, I think let's start with this £500 bet. I love the story. Where did it come from?
Yeah, man. Basically, 14-year-old kid went to state school. Coming back from school, we see this black Mercedes Benz, and my friend and I, we basically say, "Yo, how much do you think that car is?" And at 14, you don't really understand the concept of money, so he said, £500. Because to us that's like 5 million. That's like 500 million, right? And so I'm like, right, cool. And then he made a bet with me and said, I bet you're not going to see £500 before you turn 18. So I went home and I basically Googled how to make money online, because I knew that was the way that it happened. Now, 10 years ago, if you Googled how to make money online, just a bunch of people in fake Ferraris with a bunch of money coming out of their cars, etc. But I did realize this, I did see this quote, which is work with what you know. And when I realized what I knew was being really good at maths. So I started teaching people maths, and then that grew and grew and grew. Other people came to me, French, Spanish, German, and then I became the connector between the two. And that was the first business I started. And that was where the whole £500 bet thing came into it.
I mean, did you feel entrepreneurial before that point, or do you think it was a kind of a bet that you wanted to win and that made you an entrepreneur?
So it was a bet that made me think, wow, like I can just almost conjure up something in my mind and it would produce an outcome. And I think when I realized that, to me, it then almost became like magic, kind of like a game. Like you're just like, okay, what can I think of today that would solve a problem, that would provide some value, and then make money from it. So it was a combination of that. And also, I was a 14, 15-year-old kid. I grew up in a council estate, and I was born here, but then I went to live in Ghana for 10 years.
How old until you were 10?
Yeah. Because basically there's a whole story. If I hadn't, I would have ended up in foster care. So I was then sent back to Ghana to live with my nan. And I think around 14, 15, just a part of my brain triggered, and I was like, oh crap, like I'm poor. Like, I'm just poor. I lived with my dad in a council estate, and I think, I don't know what happened, but basically I was like, I can't have nice things. And then that got me thinking, right, change that.
I mean, I was going to say, this is probably the first time I've ever heard that being said, like when I've been having all these conversations, and certainly probably never got to ask a question before that. I mean, when you say, you felt poor, what do you think it was that made you feel that? Insofar as, did you then start to see people around you who had more than you, and you realised you didn't have what they had? Or I guess in your community, did you still realise you were poor?
So I think it was a combination of realizing that there were people who had stuff which I didn't. But I think even deeper than that, it was this idea that I realized where I was in life wasn't anything of my actual doing. It was like I'd been to Ghana, I'd come here, and I was in this place. And I was like, well, I could very easily just change my circumstances. And so that was the reason why. I just said, well, it doesn't intuitively make sense for me to stay like this. I can change my circumstances, and I knew I was quite good at a range of things. But the most important thing was I was very good at learning new stuff. Like, that's my thing. I just easily get stuff. And so when I realized that, I was like, this is my superpower. I'm just gonna leverage that into everything that I do.
And after the business that started from the bet, is that when you, I guess, formalized in your own mind that the entrepreneurship, being self-employed, that would be your future?
Yeah, because, at that age, I blew past our 500 pounds. I made a couple of grand from that, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then when I then started my second business, and I made like 6 figures from that, 17 for just 10 months of work. And I was like, right, okay, this is the game to play.
Where did you get the idea from? I mean, when you were 16, 17, what did you see as, were you trying to solve a problem? Were you trying to follow a passion? What made a business idea for you?
So that tutoring business, the one I started at 14, so I scaled that to like 65 tutors in like 6 weeks or so. But then what happened was I was getting a cut of basically all the deals, but then what happened was all the commissions started to come down, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And
They're all going direct.
They were all going direct, Like, if you have a French tutor, you're just gonna stick with that French tutor. And then it got me thinking, well, that whole middleman stuff, it's not really the business to be in. What you have to do is like own the IP and own the media. And so for Entrepreneur Express, I kept thinking, okay, I want to learn more about business. I'm fascinated by it. Other people would probably be as well. How do I create the media, and how do I own kind of how do I own the platform for people to learn from it? And so that was when I started building up Entrepreneur Express. I then started, I owned the publication, but the big thing there, the reason why that worked was, again, I became really good at being able to grow Facebook pages. So I'd grow pages about like Gary Vaynerchuk, Tony Robbins, Les Dennis, like motivational stuff. And then I'd create them 0 to 1 million fans in like 3-4 weeks. And then I would drive traffic from there to the blog. So I owned the pages, I owned the blog, I owned the email addresses, I owned the traffic. And so it was almost the experience from the first company, which was like, what you want to do is own the full stack, which then got me thinking about Entrepreneur Express. And I was like, right, now you own everything. Now you own the IP. And that was the way in which that business grew and scaled.
So tell me about Fanbytes. So how did that come after the magazine?
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing that for?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing Fanbytes for close to 4 years now. But that came after the magazine by in a very elongated way. So after I sold the company, which was absolutely crazy, I remember this was an American company contacted me and they said, hey, can we partner up? And in my mind, again, at 17, I'm like, partner up, yeah, maybe we'll do something and then you'll like sell some ads on my stuff. And he said, can you send over some of your stats? And so I send them over, also added in links of my Facebook pages and all that stuff. Got on the call, this is on Friday, 2 a.m. I'm sitting down in the council estate flat in my Man United shorts. And the guy goes, hey, so looking over the stats, rather than, partnering up, we just like to buy it. And I was just like, shit. I was like, whoa. But as I thought about that, as we went through the process, I realized the thing that was of value wasn't the publication. It was actually the Facebook pages I'd grown, because that owned the eyeballs and that had the distribution. And so then it got me thinking, well, if that's the bit of value, why don't I build a company where not only is in the business niche, but we can actually scale it across fashion, beauty, sport, fitness, business, food, drink. And that was really the genesis, like thinking about it. And then in my second year of university, I then started Fanbites. And we started that, so I started it, got my co-founders in, and that has grown considerably. So we are now like 50 people, multiple millions of revenue.
I know you do a lot with TikTok now, don't you?
So, so we activate a lot with brands like the government, Deliveroo, McDonald's, McDonald's on their Gen Z strategy. So it's like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube. We've done Twitter before, but that was dead.
But might it get resurrected now they've got Twitter stories?
I know. Twitter is so bizarre because I feel like they should, like, Twitter is my favorite social network, but I feel like, I've held stock in Twitter for so long, and I think like the most I've ever got up was like 30%. But I feel like a stock like Twitter should have been way, way, way more. But I don't think they're going to get resurrected. I mean, they had their time with Trump. Trump was literally the one thing to boost up the stock price, and it's kind of meh.
So tell me about the business model for Fanbytes. You're a marketing agency.
Yeah, so we have 3 parts of the business. So the first part of the business is Fanbytes, the agency. Brands come to us and we run influencer campaigns for them. The second part of the business is, because going back to my whole idea of like owning the funnel and owning everything, is we also have a talent agency where we exclusively manage the biggest social media stars in the UK. And then we have a third bit, which is an owned and operated IP called the Byte House, which we launched at the start of lockdown, where we put 6 TikTokers into a house. They have over 25 million fans right now, just on TikTok alone.
What's it called?
The Byte House.
Because I've seen another. You're probably not going to want to say the name, but it's not called. I've seen another one that I was going to ask what it was. They've been all over Instagram lately about moving into another house, but it's not good. Is there another concept like this?
Yeah, so there's the Hype House as well in the US. So there's all these different ones.
I'll find out what it is later. I'll tell you.
And for us, it's kind of like for us, because we own the IP on that, and so far that's launched like books and TV shows, and we've launched all that stuff in there.
And what do you do with the guys? You put them in a house.
Put them in a house. They create content. They collaborate.
Do you
with
tell
brands.
them what content to create, or do they?
Yeah, so to some degree. So we have quite a lot of control over the type of content that they create. Yeah.
And but then you own the IP from the content that they create whilst in there.
So we own the IP. We own the IP to the brand. So that then suddenly means that book deals, tours, all that stuff, we own the IP. So you have an agency, you have talent, and you have owned and operated IP. But it's all under the remit of like reaching a Gen Z audience.
Okay. And has the business changed over the last 4 years? I guess back when you started, TikTok wouldn't have been around, would it? Probably.
Yeah, probably the last 2 things, talent and owned and operated, that has come within the last 18 months to 2 years. So beforehand, it was just like running influencer campaigns for brands, but it's changed now considerably.
And what's it like for you? I guess the kid from the council estate that only got into business because you were trying to win a bet. Now dealing with the government, McDonald's, these international brands. I mean, how do you? I guess what's your strategy for winning these brands? How do you talk to what must be some very antiquated people within these brands, who are probably set in some of their old marketing ways, and not only are you probably half their age, you're talking a language these guys probably don't even understand.
Show them the numbers, man. Show them the numbers. Show them the proof. It's very easy to win someone over if you say, give me 50 grand and I would pretty much guarantee I'll turn it into 100. Because we've done this stuff for quite a long time. We know the data and we know the creative and we know the type of things that generally should work. And so because of that, it's very easy conversation for us to go to brands and go, do that. And because we've like talked about our work a lot, for example, our first like 4.5 million we didn't really have an outbound people going out. It was all inbound. And it was just because we create good content and we push it out, and that works very well.
But what do you find different about marketing to Generation Z, compared to other marketing segments?
So I think one of the things that's perhaps most important.
Just before you answer that as well, maybe just for anyone watching and listening, can we just clarify exactly what we mean by generation?
Yeah, cool. So when we talk about Gen Z, we're talking about the age between, say, like 13 to about 24. The key difference that I talk about here is, so often people go and say, like they care more about the world and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I don't actually believe that to be true. I think the only key difference.
Tell that to Callum. He cares about the world.
The only thing that I think is different, is distinct, is that we've grown up with the mobile phone. It's basically almost the remote control to our world, and so because of that, we can amplify things a lot more, things that we like and things that we don't like. And so when you start to understand, some people talk about using memes and cultural context and all that stuff, but like using memes, if you're a 50-year-old and there's a meme that's relevant to you, you'd like it. So it's not as if you can only use memes for this audience and then no other person. But I think the key difference is that like Gen Z have grown up with things we can amplify.
I guess we're saying it's not so much a marketing strategy in terms of necessarily the specific content you're putting out. It is the fact that the content that gets put out is going to be consumed by people who grew up with a mobile phone.
Yeah, exactly. Grew up with a mobile phone, have a much higher propensity to share, and also have a much higher barrier to bullshit because there's so many options out there. So when you realize that, you're like, right, the bar's much higher.
And what about, obviously we're 9-10 months into COVID while we're filming this. I mean, have you noticed a change in these Generation Z guys over the last 9 or 10 months, or have you had to alter some of your branding strategies and marketing strategies?
Well, more people spending time on social, primarily on TikTok, primarily on Snapchat as well. People do spend a lot more time on there actually than on Instagram, I found, like during this period. Everyone is getting higher and higher, but I think like those two have seen a lot more. I think that Zoom has become a thing, obviously, but what I'm starting to see is almost people seeing Zoom as like the new club. And so people are starting to create stuff on social, which would lead very easily into Zoom as well. So that's pretty cool.
And I mean, when it comes to creating content, I guess it's always important for influencers to be fresh and to be ahead of the curve, etc. I know you're a massive fan of constant reinvention. Just talk to me a little bit more about that.
So I think that the biggest kind of 0 to 1 change that's going to happen with influencers is, I think the next $1 billion brand is going to be built by an influencer completely off social media, 100%. The reason why is because one of the things we've seen during the pandemic is basically that, brand spending has kind of gone a bit, fuzzy and then it's come strong, but influencer audiences have grown and grown and grown. So the valuable thing is the audience. And if you can sell multiple things to that audience, there's no reason why, rather than it being a brand here and then being an influencer here, actually the two just combine and the influencer is the brand and the brand is the influencer. I've personally made a bunch of investments, not even in companies, but in like actual influencers. And I've said, I pretty much guarantee that you would make $1 million this year, just because they have such a strong tie-in with their audience. They can sell more stuff to them, courses, ebooks, physical products, events. There's so much stuff you can do. So that to me is one of my big things, that I firmly believe that the next like $1 billion company is going to be started by an influencer.
Well, I was about to ask you what 2021 and the future holds for yourself and Fanbytes, but I guess you probably answered the question there then.
Yeah, for Fanbytes, I think the big thing is so we started off as an agency, and then as time goes on, we've kind of delved more into like owning the talent stack. We are next year we'll be launching a TV show around the Bite House. We are doing.
Will that be on TV or will that be streamed live on social apps?
Both. So streaming and then also on TV. There's a book deal. makeup line. Like there's so much cool stuff there. But I think like, if I think that's where the future of influencers are going, then that's where I think most people should be spending the time on. TikTok is going to be ever more important, but I think it's going to be more important that TikTok is not a social network. TikTok is just like an entertainment platform. People often go, the competitor of TikTok is Instagram, but I think that's bullshit. I think the actual competitor to TikTok is YouTube or Netflix, because actually you don't go to TikTok to see stuff with your friends. What you almost do is you go and just to be like
consume entertainment,
just to consume entertainment, kind of like Netflix or YouTube, where you just go, oh, what's on today, and just kind of flick through.
Well, this has been fantastic talking to you. Where can we find more about you? Where can we find you on TikTok? Where you give yourself and Fanbites a shout out before you go?
So you can find me on TikTok. Most of the stuff that I think would be useful to the audience would probably be on LinkedIn.
Okay.
On LinkedIn and Twitter, I'm like very active. So that's where you'll be able to find me.
Perfect. Well, check out Timothy on LinkedIn, Twitter, and all the other social platforms out there, guys. Thanks a lot for listening and watching as always. You can find me on TikTok, but I'm not as entertaining on TikTok as I'm sure this guy would like me to be. But maybe after this conversation we can have a chat. But the Matt Haycox, TheMattHaycox, on all the social platforms. If you watch this on YouTube, make sure you also listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to the audio version of this, make sure you check me out on the video versions too. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon.